think you own me, but you don't. You think you can destroy me. You can't. Your labels do not contain me. Your lies do not intimidate me. I will not be less than what I was created to be, and I will not run in fear. Time and time again, you've held me down, but not today. Today, I win the battle. Today, you run from me, because I am strong. I am courageous. I am an overcomer.
Beautiful outside today. Yeah. I couldn't resist. All right. Well, hello. Today we're, Oh, yeah, I know. Today we're going to start a new series, Overcomer. It's based on a Life Church series as well. But this is I really love this one. This is a great one, especially for me right now. I don't know about everybody else, but summer coming along, my to-do list is just overwhelming. and so this is really encouraging to me, this series, and so I hope it is for everybody else as well. But so I know that we all already know that, you're overcomers. Through Christ, you're an overcomer. You're more than conquerors. What I'm excited about this series because we're going to be talking about some specific struggles that we face and get caught up in that cause us to believe the lie that we're not overcomers. So we might, be afraid that we're going to fail or not be good enough, or think, I've made too many mistakes or messed up too bad. How can my past help anyone? Some things, they just seem far too big. They're way bigger than me. They require too much work, and I don't have the time or the passion to do any of that. So today what we're going to talk about specifically is something that may be a little bit more common in our lives than we even realize. Have you ever been driving to work and somebody passed you and you thought, oh, that truck is nice. That's nicer than my truck. I wish I had that truck, Or somebody told somebody else that they were beautiful and you just or then you get to work and then Steve shows up 5 minutes late and you think, why can't he ever be on time? I never show up late, And at lunch, somebody orders the fried chicken with the French fries and the fried okra and a side of gravy and then a slice of pie next to that. And you begrudgingly order the salad, watching them eat the good food. And so, you're seeing all this and you decide to splurge and you go ahead and eat your croutons, because you're thinking, I wish I could eat like that. I'm tired of salads and sandwiches. I'm gaining weight just watching this guy eat. Or maybe your job is a little bit like mine, where you're in people's houses all day, and they're big, nice, fancy houses. They're they got clean floors and cool decorations and big TVs and nice pools in the backyard, and then you get home after work and you walk through your knee-deep weeds and you lower a shoulder into your door to get it open. Your house fights back a little by hitting you with this strange smell. And then you trip on all your stuff in the walkway as you go in, and you have to move something just to sit on your couch, and you think, man, I wish my house was as nice as theirs. Or maybe you have an opposite reaction to all these scenarios, and you're like, I sure am glad I'm not like those people. They made me put booties on just to walk in their house. I can't imagine living like that, right? For me, I'll often catch myself comparing myself to somebody else without even realizing it at the time, especially when it comes to eating, because if I breathe too much air throughout the day, I gain weight. So it's really discouraging to hear skinny people talk about how they need to lose weight, or somebody who's never been overweight tell me how that I should lose weight. And what always happens is that, that'll happen, and then at lunchtime, that person will order all the fried food, and then I'm left thinking, how? You know, why? Why can't I do that? I wish I could eat like that and not gain weight. I wish I was more like you. So, if you haven't figured it out, today we're talking about overcoming the curse of comparisons. There are so many ways that comparisons can creep up on you. At some point in your life, you've probably had to face a scenario similar to one of the ones that we talked about. Either somebody else has something way better than you, or maybe you have something that is great that you're proud of. Or maybe you have something great that you're happy with and satisfied with, and then you look to your left and somebody has something that's just a little bit better, and it kind of is a little bit discouraging or whatever. One of the earliest comparison curse moments that I can remember when I was a kid growing up, I was actually in grade school. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I know it was early grade school because my brother's a couple years younger than me, and when we were younger, we would walk through our field to Uncle Michael and Aunt Darla's house, and we'd hang out with Zane all the time. And I remember whenever I had to be at school longer than Dusty, and I didn't get home till late in the afternoon, and Dusty was already at home, so he'd get to go down to Zane's house earlier than me. I was always really, like, that's not fair. How come he gets to do this? That's not right, Dusty has a better deal. I'm getting ripped off here. The key thought for today is the fastest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. It's like when you really love your home, and you're so thankful for your home, you love it, it's special to you, and then your best friend gets this HGTV home makeover and in their house, and then you're like, man, move that bus over here and do my house next. What happens is that we get so focused on what we don't have or what somebody else has or what we wish that we had that we completely ignore everything going on in our lives. We completely ignore our own blessings and abilities, to the point that we forget they even exist. You might have heard the story of the raven and the swan. And it's a pretty silly story, but it illustrates this thought very well. One day there was a raven sitting on a branch over a small body of water when the swan came floating by. The swan, he said, "You are so white and beautiful, it must be nice. Nice being you, you must be so happy. I wish I was like you." And then the swan said, "Me? Happy? I don't have any color at all. Look at me. Just white and boring. Have you even met the parrot? Look at him. He has so many different colors. I bet he is happy." And then the parrot says, "Me? Are you making fun of me or something for not being colorful enough? I'm nothing like the peacock. So many beautiful colors. He's probably the most happy." And then the peacock, who's in a cage, says, "I am so colorful, people put me in a cage to show me off to others. I wish I looked more like the raven so that I could fly anywhere and nobody would bother me." If you're taking notes, let's define the curse of comparison. Ultimately, what comparison does, it steals the joy, the contentment that God gives us. We could say it like this: where comparison begins, contentment ends. So we live in a world that makes comparison easy. If you're shopping, you can click on the boxes and compare them side by side. You can get on social media, on Facebook or whatever, Instagram, and at any moment you can see whoever's greatest moments. You may be having a great day, but then you open Facebook and see someone having fun at some event or whatever, and you're thinking, why didn't I get invited to that? I want to go. While you stand by the microwave waiting on your Stouffer's Salisbury steak to finish heating up, you're scrolling through Facebook and you're looking at all these pictures of your friends, your best friend's vacation on the beach with, while they're eating lobster dinners and whatever. You're comparing your newest album or one of your albums to somebody else's greatest hits. I like the way Pastor Stephen Furtick puts it. The problem is We're comparing our behind the scenes with everybody else's highlight reels. In other words, you're doing your everyday thing, but it seems like everybody else is doing all this great stuff. So you think, ugh, my life sucks. My life stinks because I'm stuck here all day while you're out skydiving and you're out surfing and you're camping and going on a cruise or whatever. And before long, we find ourselves miserable because where comparison begins, contentment ends. Let's look at what Paul said in chapter 10 of 2 Corinthians. In verse 12, Paul identifies the main flaw with comparisons. He says, we wouldn't dare compare ourselves with others, but they are only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as the standard of measurement. How ignorant. How ignorant. You know, that's what the birds were doing, ignoring certain truths in pursuit of others. How ignorant it is to compare myself to somebody else and using them as a standard of measurement. How ignorant it is to say, look how great their relationship is. They always get along. Look how their kids act all the time. Look at how much money they're making and I'm not. If you're taking notes, one of the problems with comparing is that it does two things. Comparing makes you feel either superior or inferior, and neither of those things honor God. So when talking about comparisons, Pastor Andy Stanley says that there is no win in comparisons. He called it the land of Ur. In the land of Ur, everybody simply wants Ur. So whatever somebody has, somebody else, they want that plus Ur. They want to be rich Ur, cool Ur, pretty Ur, happier, funny Ur, stronger, faster. Yeah, she's getting it, huh? Skinnier, yeah. And some of you may be thinking, I don't have a problem with that. No, I never want to be better, faster, stronger. Instead, you're more competitive like me, and what you're actually saying is, actually, I don't want to live in the land of, I want to live in the land of Est. I want to be the bestest. I want to be the fastest, the strongest. If you ride your bike with me, I don't want to be faster than you. I want to be fastest. I want to be the fastest. I don't want to lose more weight. I want to lose the most. I don't want my to be bigger than yours. I want it to be the biggest. I want to be the greatest, the happiest, the most. I want the most likes on my Facebook page. What's funny is how you can see the same exact thing happening to people in the Bible. And I love this story we're going to talk about today. One of my favorite things about Scripture is that when you read these stories, you're reading about real people doing things that people really do. So while Scripture can be very powerful, it can also be very entertaining and funny. So for example, you would think that the disciples would always get along, or at the very at least just be excited with Jesus. But it wasn't uncommon for them to squabble. So some people even think that John didn't like each other. They didn't get along. And while I'm not sure about that, there's at the very least there is some kind of level of competitiveness that they have with each other. And you can see it when you read through the Gospels. They're just regular people, and there's this odd little competition between them. You see them saying things like, I got to sit next to Jesus. I was the closest. Who's his favorite? I'm the best disciple. I love Jesus the most, that kind of thing. They're regular people with a streak of competitiveness and comparison between them. So we're going to look at a story in John chapter 20. And John is a very interesting character. While one of my favorite books in the Bible is the book of John, he does this extremely annoying thing where he refers to himself in the third person. And I don't know if he only did this in his writing just to kind of have this like surprise factor at the end or whatever, or if he really talked like that. But if he talked like that, I can only imagine what Peter, if they already had this competitive streak, what Peter might have been thinking, Peter might have been very frustrated. Can you imagine John regularly walking up to Peter and saying stuff like, "Good morning, Peter. Hope you're on your A game today because John's catching up to you. Leaderboards. Guess who Jesus asked to help carry the stuff for lunch today? John." Hey, Peter. You know who the disciple of Jesus loves? John. But he really does do that. I mean, can you believe the nerve of somebody to say things, call themselves the one that Jesus loved, right? The one. How ridiculous. That would have to be annoying. I think it would be annoying. But at the same time, it's pretty funny. It's like Moses in the Old Testament. Guess what Moses called himself in the Old Testament? He called himself the most humble person on earth. What? So there appears to be this competition between Peter and John. And after Jesus was murdered and buried in the tomb, later Mary goes to the tomb and finds the stone had rolled away and the tomb was empty. She didn't know what to think. Did somebody take him? Had he risen? She decided that she was going to go tell the disciples. And now I want to read what happens next. And when we read through this, pay close attention to how John describes this story. And notice how many times John tells you who is the faster runner between him and Peter. So in chapter 20, starting in verse 2, it says, "So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they have put him.' So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first." No big deal. And then in verse 6, "Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb." And then in verse 8, "Finally the other disciple who the one who reached the tomb first, the faster, he also went inside." What? What are you doing? Just picture this happening, like going down, him telling the story in real time in your head. It sounds like a silly movie, you know? Imagine what might have happened next when they run to tell the others and they show up panning. Hey guys, Peter and John, we just ran to Jesus' tomb. You won't believe what John saw. Peter saw it too, but John was faster and saw it first. Jesus, he's risen. Yeah, don't go bothering to look. He's not there. Peter and John, we both saw it, and John saw it first though. That was a long run. Here comes Peter. He can confirm it. John is surprised he beat you, Peter. Hey, what was that? A mile and a half? John didn't even stop. That was fast. So 3 times he's bragging about beating Peter while explaining the biggest event in human history, right? This most impactful moment the world has ever seen. John was faster. It almost sounds like a bad Will Ferrell movie. And in case you're wondering, John's not done. This continues in chapter 21. The disciples, they're out fishing, and they couldn't catch anything. So finally somebody calls out from the shore. It was Jesus. And he told them to throw their net to the other side of the boat. And when they did, they had more than they could even pull up. And that's when John said, "It's the Lord. I recognize him first." I saw him first. And then Peter jumps off the boat and swims to the shore. And now I know Peter was excited to see Jesus, but after kind of experiencing this, reading about this, I wonder if he was also just excited to get away from John. I don't know. Anyway, and then Peter has this encounter with Jesus. Now, to understand this encounter that Peter has with Jesus, we have to go back to the Passover meal that they shared, and then the moment after Jesus was arrested. Peter is very bold about his love for Jesus. He said that he could never leave Jesus. He loved him so much that he would even die for him. And he even kind of implied that the others might betray Jesus or deny Jesus, but he would never do that. So after Jesus was arrested, this little girl comes up to Peter and says, "Hey, are you one of those disciples?" And Peter's like, "No, nope, no way, no." What kind of question is that anyway? Are you? No. So Peter, he actually denies Jesus 3 times. And then the rooster crows that Jesus told Peter would happen. And you know that even with all the crowd murmuring and talking and hollering, whatever was going on, all the commotion, rooster crowed, it was probably the only thing Peter heard. It was probably a deafening echo in his head because he had just confirmed what Jesus had told him. He was probably devastated and humiliated. Now, though, he has this moment with Jesus. He's walking on the shore, this powerful moment with Jesus, the Savior, that he denied. And Jesus is confronting him, and he asks him, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, you know that I do. And then a second time, Jesus says, do you love me? Yes, you know I do. And then he asks a third time, but he uses a different word. Do you really, really, really love me, Peter? And Peter says, of course I do. And then he looks over his shoulder, and who's there following him? The one Jesus loved. Peter has this one-on-one moment with Jesus, and then he sees the competition. And what happens? Where comparison begins, contentment ends, right? So verse 21, Peter says, what about him? What about him, Jesus? What about him, Lord? You told me to feed the sheep. What's he going to do? What's his job? What's his assignment? And then this is what Jesus said. If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? What does it matter? As for you, follow me. Why are you worried about him? What does it matter? Why are you wasting your time on him? I'm talking to you. What does Jesus tell him to do? Follow me. Do what you are called to do. Don't worry about him. Your assignment is to feed my sheep. Jesus wants Peter to do something important. And that's that you cannot faithfully follow Jesus if you're always looking over your shoulder, comparing yourself to somebody else. We will never be able to faithfully follow Jesus if we're always comparing ourselves to somebody else. What about them? What do they have? What are they getting? What are they doing? Why are they more blessed in this area than me? By nature, we're sinful beings. And that sinful nature, it wants to pull us away from the heart of God and toward something else, anything else. We have this internal longing for God, but sin wants to fill that hole with something external so that you don't have room for the God that you actually need. The hole was actually created for. So sin shows us all these shiny things and makes us compare to somebody else and makes us go, oh, look at that. His life is so great. That looks like so much fun. That must be better than what I have. What we must understand is that there's no external accomplishment. There's no blessing, relationship. There's no amount of money. There's no satisfaction that'll ever quench the inner spiritual longing that we have. No amount of or even est in this world that will satisfy the spiritual brokenness that we have inside. In Craig Groeschel's words, he said, you can look for it and look for it and look for it and look for it, but there's nothing on the outside designed by God to satisfy you on the inside beside the God who created you. That's why if you want to overcome the curse of comparison, you must answer this question. Who or what is going to define my worth? Who are you living for? Whose expectations are you trying to live up to? Who are you trying to impress? Who are you comparing yourself to? What is your standard of measurement? Who are you letting define your worth? And if your answer is anything besides Jesus Christ, you're always going to be running a race that you cannot win. Never ever win it. So what defines you? What defines your worth, your value? If it's anything other than Jesus, you're running a race you'll never win. Just like Peter, Jesus has given you an assignment to follow him, to do that, not worry about somebody else, not these other things. Stop running to beat somebody else at their race and follow Jesus and race the race that he's given you. I don't remember what cycling race it was, the Tour de France or whatever, but there's this famous video, it's funny, of these cyclists are riding in this race, and then out of nowhere on the shoulder, on the sidelines in the crowd, there's this dude that shows up on this bicycle and passes them all. And he's riding faster than all of them. In his moment of glory, this dude pulls out ahead of everybody else, just like John, for his moment of fame. And can you guess what this guy won for doing that? Nothing. Not a thing. It wasn't his race to run. He didn't even complete the entire race. Just that one moment on TV to show how fast he could go. It was a complete waste of energy and time. And that same way, Jesus has given you a specific race to run. He doesn't want you to be distracted by trying to beat all these other people at a race that you're not even supposed to. He gave you a special assignment. Don't worry about Peter or John's race. Run the race set before you. You've heard this all before, and it's in Hebrews chapter 12. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip that slows us down." All these comparisons and distractions, especially sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, by Jesus being the one who is our standard of measurement, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Don't get tripped up by comparing yourself to someone else, but focus on the race God gave you. You know, when it is tough and tiring, hang in there and keep running. As I said, stop looking behind you at everybody else and how good or bad they're doing and focus on Jesus. When somebody else succeeds, celebrate and keep running. When somebody else gets something, celebrate and keep running. Somebody else gets to take a break and go on vacation, celebrate and keep running. Run your race. Another verse you've heard 1,000 times, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24. Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away. But we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. Run with purpose in every step. Define what's important and get rid of what's not. And don't let